Chet and Susanna Baines. As marriage experts, we specialize in home modifications, which will help you improve the feng shui of your marriage.
Because home is where the heart is, we update, construct, and remodel your nightmare and flip it into the marriage of your dreams. We are
The Marriage Fixer-Uppers.
So guys, tell me exactly what's been going on.
I feel like he shuts down and never wants to talk about how he's feeling.
Oh yeah. We're gonna tear down that wall. Really open it up in here.
Perfect. That's what I want.
She doesn't understand the pressures I have at work. It's a lot to bear, and I have to do it on my own.
You definitely have a load-bearing issue, that's for sure. But don't worry.
Huh. Where's that stud?
Exactly. Where's the stud I married? The one that
Here we go
pursued me?
again, talking about how I've let myself go.
I
You know how many
didn't say
wads I do?
that.
I do like
Oh,
three
looks like
wads.
you're gonna have to get started right away. Hey! Looks like you got shiplap under here. You know, your marriage is kind of like this new light fixture I just installed. No, it's actually like this light bulb. You get what I'm saying?
Are you saying I need a new light bulb?
What? No. Your marriage just needs a little spark.
Are you even an electrician?
No, it's just anecdotal marriage analogies. That's what counts.
What in the world is that?
Those are the new his and her toilets. You see, marriage is about opening up and sharing everything together. We like to call it sharing our marriage bowels. A couple that goes together grows together. So guys, we don't have a lot of money left in the budget.
It's starting to sound a little bit like our marriage. Am I right? No.
But with the leftover money, you have one of three options to choose. Number one, we have a beautiful walk-in closet for the master bedroom. Here we have a man cave with theater seating.
That one sounds good to me.
Just like you to think about yourself.
Oh, come on, guys. This is about talking, listening, making a decision together.
And number three, a brand new in-ground swimming pool.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds like a nice compromise.
Why is Chet shirtless?
Well, I have a pool company, too. Just got my chest waxed.
Walk-in closet sounds great.
Are you guys ready to see the latest addition to your lovely home?
Yeah.
They are sure to bring this marriage back to good.
Ta-da! What is this?
It's a dog. See, nothing brings a couple closer together than having a common purpose, like being able to take care of a dog. Gives you more responsibility when it comes to taking care of the kids.
The kids?
No!
Whose kids are these?
You can't be serious.
Oh, hey, don't worry. We're turning John's office into a guest suite, so when the in-laws come to move in, everything will be taken care of.
You got rid of my office?
Oh, come on, like you ever did any work in there.
Not now, Brooke.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting again.
Oh, no!
I told you guys you weren't ready for kids.
These aren't our kids.
Well, it looks like our work is done here. Good job, honey.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Good evening and welcome to our Resilient Marriage event. If you are joining us virtually, welcome. We're so glad that you're with us. We're going to be doing some things live, interactive tonight, and so if you're watching it tonight, we would invite you to respond. If you're watching this at a later date, you will probably miss the opportunity, but please don't actually. That would probably be a little annoying. But if you are with us live, we would love to have you give us some feedback. I want to pray, and then we'll jump into the evening activities. Father, thank you for the privilege of sharing some time together. God, we're here because we believe that marriage matters, and we believe that marriages have the ability to thrive no matter the challenges, no matter the circumstances. God, we want to see you do some cool stuff in our lives, and we want to trust you enough to be able to take the risks and to move in the direction that can see that realized. We love you. May you be honored, and may we be encouraged by this time together tonight. In the precious name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. So these resilient marriage events are designed to really kind of help you thrive in marriage, because we believe that it's possible to thrive in marriage regardless of what challenges, regardless of what differences you may have, regardless of maybe broken backgrounds you may come from, regardless of personality differences, and regardless of the challenges that may surround you, regardless of financially or whatever else. And so we want to help you build marriages that thrive. And so we've got some things we want to do tonight to help move in that direction. But the first thing we want to do is ask you to give us some feedback. So if you are watching from home, we're going to ask you to text this number right out of the gate, 616-287-0594. Just text your last name or text you and your partner's last names to us. Let us know who you are. We would love to be able to know who's engaging with us, and we're going to give you an opportunity to ask some questions in just a little bit. Secondly, if you want to give feedback at any point, give it during the night. Feel free to do that via that text number. And you're going to have a couple different presentations. And if you've got specific questions, and one of them is going to come from the tidies as they talk about money, if you want to respond to that with some questions, would invite you to do that. They're prepared to answer some questions for us at the end of their presentation. So don't miss the opportunity to engage that way. Resilient marriages. What are they? How do we build them? The thing that we talk about oftentimes is that there's really three kind of core elements to a resilient marriage. Resilient marriages are marriages that have responsibility, renewal, and risk. And so this is kind of the way that we describe a resilient marriage. It's a covenant relationship of complementary sexes where both take personal responsibility for their own emotional world. Meaning they don't blame each other for how they feel and what they're dealing with. They take responsibility for their emotional world, behavior, and their own spiritual lives. Cling to an unfailing hope and expectation of renewal. That tomorrow can be better than today. That there is always hope, that there is, because of who Christ is and because of what he's accomplished, that we believe that things can get better even when there's real hurt and real brokenness. And even in the face of betrayal and other kinds of deep wounds, and that they embrace an appropriate and life-giving risk. Risk is an essential part of being able to move in a direction together and really grow a thriving marriage. And so they're willing to take risks that the gospel compels and that intimacy requires. And so two people that take personal responsibility, have a consistent focus on renewal and what can happen in the future, and that they're willing to take some risks. And I know risk sounds a little bit extreme, but here's the deal. Every time I have a fight with my spouse, or every time something goes AWOL in the marriage, or every time I'm not exactly sure how things are going to play out, if I take a step towards them, if I initiate a conversation with them, if I even offer an apology, I'm taking a risk because I don't have control of how they're going to respond. And so risk can be at the slightest level of just offering an apology or re-engaging a conversation, or deciding to make myself available to my spouse in a different way or respond a different way because of a desire to help heal the relationship. And so that is a resilient marriage. I want to start tonight by giving you kind of what I believe is one of the best examples, or maybe the best images for what a healthy, resilient marriage looks like, and that is that of a sandbox. All of us, I think, have had the experience of playing as a child in a sandbox. In a sandbox, there's toys, there's sand, we're building castles, we're doing lots of things within a sandbox, and there's other kids in this sandbox. And there's some things that we learn in a sandbox. We learned that when we're selfish with our toys, that other kids get mad at us. When we take toys from other kids, that other kids get mad at us. And we learn how to begin to share. We learn how to get along with. We learn how to begin to build a relationship with the sandbox. And I love the illustration of a sandbox because in many ways, a sandbox is a place where kids learn how to do things in the sandbox that they're going to have to figure out in the rest of life. And the consequences in the sandbox, maybe you'll get sand thrown in your face, but it's really not that big a deal. But when you get out of the sandbox, now learning those lessons helps you to avoid other major problems outside of the sandbox. And my hope is that in marriage, in a resilient marriage, that we create a sandbox where we can learn how to actually do life well, learn how to make decisions in the rest of life, learn how to treat each other well, so that in other areas of life, we can be more successful. So with that idea, because we trust each other enough and we forgive each other and we're working towards something together, I want to apply a passage of Scripture that is very familiar to most of us to this idea of the sandbox. So in Romans chapter 12, Paul takes on this notion of what does real love look like. And we've heard this passage applied in a lot of different ways. I'm going to ask you to apply it only to your marriage for just a moment. Think about your current relationship and how does this apply to your relationship with your spouse. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. What are the things that I should hate in my marriage? Well, I should hate those things that I know cause damage to my spouse. I should hate those things that make my spouse feel unloved. I should hate those things and despise those things that I know are going to cause damage to the trust in our relationship. That hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. That I move in the direction of, I hold dear to the things that I know are good for my spouse and good for us. Be devoted to one another in love. That there's a mutual devotion to one another. Honor one another above yourselves. To give honor to the wow factor that I desire connection with, that I desire them to feel affirmed in the relationship, even at maybe my own expense. Never be lacking in zeal. Don't lose that passion for the other person. A zealous, a commitment to do things well and to be intense about those things. But keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord in the way that I relate to my spouse. Be joyful in hope. Patient in affliction. For many of you watching, I know that there's been afflictions in the last couple of years. For some of you, it's been sickness and financial challenges and other kinds of things. Patient in the afflictions that you encounter with each other. Faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. My first and primary neighbor is my spouse. When they're in need, do I share? Do I offer something to them? Especially when I know there are things that they need to hear from me, or things that they need from me that because I'm selfish, I choose not to give them. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Persecution, we have lots of major ideas of, but persecution is simply this: being treated unfairly or unjustly for something that you are committed to. And there are times where in marriage we feel like we're trying to do things well and our spouse is treating us unjustly or unfairly. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Don't be conceited. And then he closes it out this way: don't repay anyone evil for evil. How much do we oftentimes reciprocate, or we don't offer something back because we've been hurt by our spouse? Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And he closes out this way: if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If it is possible, as much as it depends on you, as much as you are able to invest in and participate in living in peace with your spouse, live at peace with them. The marriage as a sandbox. If I can't learn how to love like this in my marriage, I'll never learn how to love like this anywhere else. If I don't learn how to love like this in my marriage, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to offer anything outside of my marriage in a way that's going to ultimately be redemptive in the relationship that I have. And so marriage is a sandbox. So what a beautiful environment to learn how to love well, to serve well, to be able to learn how to trust, learn how to build one another up in the context of the marriage. One of my favorite books that's come out in the last couple of years is called Lies Couples Believe. And in that book, and I show you the picture of the book because you may want to get your hands on it. What an incredible resource to think about the lies that we believe that cause damage to our relationships. And so here's just a handful of the lies that they cover in this book. The lies that they talk about in the book that we believe oftentimes that cause damage to our relationship, that the primary purpose for marriage is for me to be happy. That I want to go into my marriage expecting my spouse to make me happy, and that the primary reason I got married is so I would be happy, causes damage to the relationship. Another lie: my spouse can completely meet all of my needs. When I expect my spouse to meet all of my emotional needs, all of the needs that I have in my life, when I go to them and I demand that they meet those needs, and when they don't, I'm upset with them. That is a lie that causes damage. My spouse is a bigger mess of a human being than I am. No, they're not. No, they're not. They've got problems, and so do you. And you, in fact, one of my favorite books on marriage is called When Two Sinners Say I Do, because you recognize that you're marrying somebody else who's just as flawed and broken as you. I'm entitled to my spouse's love and affection. Trust is something that's earned. And the way that we relate to each other, be careful that we don't assume too much. Our marital problems are all my spouse's fault. My spouse should accept me just the way I am. My spouse should be just like me. Made that mistake early in marriage. That was a terrible idea. What I learned over time is that if my spouse and I are too much alike, one of us is redundant. And I also learned how valuable it is to have diversity in the way we see things and relate to each other. My spouse has to earn my forgiveness. Telling somebody that they don't deserve their forgiveness or deserve your grace is like saying that I can plan my own surprise birthday party. The reality is that by definition, forgiveness and grace is something that I give regardless of what has been done or offered back. Forgiveness is an extension of grace to another individual. Reconciliation requires an acknowledgement of the wound. Reconciliation requires the other person to take a step. Forgiveness is something I'm called to. And then the last one, we can reconcile without real repentance. That I can be reconciled to you. And we do this a lot. It's like, I'm sorry, now let's be okay. When the reality is there's really not been a full acknowledgement of the problem that's in the way of the connection. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that. I love wrestling with and just thinking about how many of those lies do I believe, do I buy into, do I draw conclusions and just assumptions about? Are the things that I need to wrestle with when it comes to those lies? And so we come to this next topic, and I had reached out to the Tidies a couple of months ago to think about this with me, because when you see marriages struggle, and you see the obstacles to thriving in marriage, so often it's money that is a major obstacle. But I'll be honest with you, rarely is it the amount of money that's being made. So often it's how people are thinking about money, how they're relating to money, and how they're allowing money and the power struggles that money creates to cause division within the relationship. And so I've asked the Tidies to come and share their journey in this area and how it has built up their marriage and how it has equipped them and positioned them well for an incredible future, but also how it's allowed them to care for one another, care for their kids, and be an incredible blessing to so many others around them. So I'm going to ask them to come and just share their perspective and their journey on finances.
Thank you, Nate. Wow, it's so nice to be here. It's nice to join you all in the auditorium and you that are joining us from home. When Nate asked us to talk a little bit about money, we thought we could probably go 97 different ways with it. So we just want to kind of tell a little bit about what we did and how it impacted our family. So this is my family, my husband, Keith, and we have 3 kids, 3 grown kids. Our oldest is Morgan, who's 24. The other one on the other side is Mason. He is 20. And then our baby is the middle, and he just graduated from Sparta High School this year, Logan. So that's our family.
So there's 2 goals that we hope, maybe. I'll just tell you the 2 goals that we have today. We have 2 goals we hope you leave here with today. The first is we want to challenge kind of what society tells you about money. And the second one is that we want you and your spouse to take one step closer to each other when you deal with money.
Okay, so
We're Chet and Susanna Baines. As married...
did I do that? Sorry. Okay. All right. Well, we wanted to start here with why did we need to make a change. And we were young when we were married and had kids, and we started out doing what society was telling us we needed to do, buy all the things. And so this was our circumstance that we were in. We found out that what we were doing wasn't working. This is what we were doing. We were overspending. We were entitled. We felt like we should be able to have all the things that we want. We are moving money around to make it one more month. We were stressing a lot. Oops. We were feeling out of control with our money. And then we woke up the next day and did it all over again. And we figured out that that wasn't working. So I'm wondering how many are feeling the same way. So I want to know if this sounds like you, if you've heard yourself in this argument before.
Wait, there's no money? Well, this is terrible. You guys are going to have to get married in like a rec center.
Honey, it's gonna be okay.
No, it's not. It's not gonna be okay. It sucks. No swing band, no lilies.
No, you know what? It's gonna be okay. I mean, you don't need to have this rustic Italian feast, you know? And you don't need this custom-made empire-waisted Duchess satin gown. You can wear off the rack.
Look, it really is gonna be okay. The important thing is that we love each other and that we're gonna get married.
Do you even understand what off the rack means?
Why don't you just pay for it yourself?
How? I don't have any money.
Well, I have some.
How much?
Well, close to.
Wow! Are you kidding me?
What? How much is it?
It's enough for wedding scenario A.
Oh, really?
How great are you, you little saver? I mean, the amount you have is exactly the budget of my dream wedding.
Oh, you guys are so made for each other.
Well, you're not suggesting that we spend all of the money on the wedding.
Yeah.
Come on, I've been saving this money for 6 years, and I kind of had some of it earmarked for the future, not just for a party.
Wow. Hello, Mr. Chandler.
This is the most special day of our lives.
No, I realize that, honey, but I'm not going to spend all the money on one party.
Honey, I love you. But if you call our wedding a party one more time, you may not get invited. We can always earn more money, okay? But we're only gonna get married once.
Look, I understand, but I have to put my foot down, okay? The answer is no.
You're gonna have to put your foot down?
Yes, I am.
Wow. Money and a firm hand. Finally a Chandler I can get on board with.
So I'm wondering if that sounds like you. I'm thinking that probably happens in more homes than we can count. So we know that money is a big issue in marriages, that learning how to handle money is a big issue in marriages, not just here in Sparta or in your homes, but across our country. So about 40% of married couples in the United States divorce. And the number one issue couples fight about is the topic that couples avoid discussing, money. So when Nate said, you want to come talk about money, we kind of said, not really. It's kind of a hard topic to talk about, but it's something that you have to talk about. So I'm wondering if you have ever said this. So if you have your pencil and your note card, we just want you to give yourself a tally every time you've said this to yourself. So if there's something out there that you want to buy, something that you think you have to have you said these things, okay? And you have to be honest because your spouse is watching you. All right, here we go. Have you ever said this? I deserve it. Give yourself a tally. If you've ever said this, I work hard, so. How about this one? Live a little. If you've said live a little, give yourself a tally. How about sometimes you got to treat yourself, right? Give yourself a tally. The sale is going to end. Or how about this one? Everyone else is buying it. Tally. I should be able to be comfortable, do what I want, when I want, how I want. If I buy the new car, I'll have a warranty. It will save us money. See some tallies coming up in the audience. Yeah, there might be a few. So I want you to think about what you just did. Think about your tallies that you just made. Take 30, 40 seconds and just talk to your spouse next to you. Just what's coming up in your mind. What do you make a connection with? We'll give you about 30 or 40 seconds.
Okay, so now that you got some things that you're talking about, I'm going to kind of go through the nuts and the bolts of kind of what we did. But the first thing, am I always going the wrong way? Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so kind of the steps that we took to make the change. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about kind of where we were. We started the program that I'm going to talk to you about today 21 years ago. I was a 25-year-old young adult, I guess, at the time. Wasn't acting very adult-like, but I had just got my teaching job in Sparta. I think it was my second year of teaching. I was coaching football in Caledonia, and we lived in Granville. So I had this big, long triangle that I drove every day in the fall when coaching. I'd drive to Sparta to teach, and then to Caledonia to coach, and then back to Granville where we lived. And I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed out. We had borrowed money, credit cards. We bought a house that needed a lot of work and thought it was a good idea to fix it up. We bought a house that was 3 blocks from my parents, trying to act like our parents at the time when we were just starting out in a fresh marriage. And it was very stressful for me. And I didn't know what to do, and it wasn't by chance, God was involved with it, but I was flipping through the radio channels one day on the way to Caledonia to coach football, and I came across a radio show, and it was the Dave Ramsey Show. And I started listening, and then the next day, I listened, and the next day, I listened as I was going to it. And then one day, I went home, and I talked to Kim, and I said, I want you to start thinking about doing something different. Am I cutting out, or no? No? So we had a conversation. Yeah. Is that better? We had a conversation then, and I said, we've got to do something different. We can't keep doing what we're doing. We were doing crazy things like looking at grace periods on bills, and if there's a 10-day grace period, trying to time it exactly to get in the mail, and then it wouldn't get in the mail, and we end up paying late fees, and all these kind of bank fees were adding up, and it was nuts. And kind of the last thing that we did that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done is I went to my parents and I borrowed $10,000 to pay off credit cards, because then that opened up balances on those credit cards, so we had some wiggle room because we were out of wiggle room. So, and that's where we were 21 years ago. So that's kind of in that moment, and finding this radio show on the radio on the way to Caledonia. That's where this this was born, and I was lucky that my wife said yes. She knew how stressed out I was, and she started listening to, and we started working on this together. So we came across the show called Dave Ramsey. And Dave Ramsey has 7 steps to kind of, how do you go from basically broke, if that's where you're at, to where you can someday retire with dignity, and then earn and get a lot of wealth so that you can take care of people in the future when you have the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to kind of go through those steps with you. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these steps. We taught the Dave Ramsey Financial Pace University class, and we spend a week on each step. So it'd be really hard to kind of go through all the nuts and bolts of all these steps, but I'm just going to give you a quick kind of rundown. So the first thing we had to do is we had no money. We didn't have an emergency fund. And it always seems that when you don't have money, emergencies happen. I mean, the alternator breaks in the car, the battery needs to be replaced, right? Whatever happens, and that's when you get hit with something. So the first thing is trying to get $1,000 in an emergency fund. So that's the first step, so that when those things happen, it doesn't set you back farther. Then step 2 is to pay off all your debt, with your debt smallest to largest. Smallest in the amount of money, the amount of total, not the interest rate. So if you have a $200 debt, you pay that off first. And you scrape and try to find money to then pay those off. Sell things, do things, tighten your budget, all that kind of stuff. After all your debts are paid, except for your house, then you build a 3 to 6 month emergency. So a bigger chunk of change that could take care of you if someone got sick, someone got in a car accident, had to go to the hospital for a while, if a big life event happened. So that was step 3. Step 4 then is to go back to invest for your retirement. So investing 15% or more into a Roth IRA or any pre-tax like 403b, 401k programs that you have. Step 5 is your kids. All right, so if college funding is something that you want to do, that would be after you take care of your retirement. It's not before. You don't pay your kids college before you take care of you in the future. Step 6 is to pay off your house early, and then step 7 is to build wealth and give it and take care of people when you see needs arise. All right. So what I did is we kind of boiled this down to kind of some action steps that you can do. So I think the first thing that you would do is you got to determine where you're at. So if this is a process that you want to go through and learn about, the first thing we had to do is get on the same page. So it's not going to do any good if I'm creating a budget and I've created this master budget and then she goes and doesn't follow the budget. It's not going to work. So it's very important that you and your spouse are on the same page. All right? So you've got to know things like how much debt do you have, what kind of debt is it, how much savings do you have, where's your savings invested, how much income do you have, and what are your expenses. And you've got to get those things written down so that you can see them, so that you can look at the whole picture. All right, so that's step 1. Step 2 is you got to tell your money where to go. We were in a spot where we had no clue where our money was going. We just put it on the card and, we want to go out to dinner tonight? Sure, boom, on a card. One of the dumbest things we ever bought was a Pottery Barn set for our crib that cost like $300 20 years ago. It's crazy, but yeah, it looked good, but whatever. So when you don't have money, you just put it on the card. Yeah, well, you deal with it. So you've got to get control of where your money's going, and you've got to be in a place where you spend it before you get it, right? So many times we get our bills and then we pay our bills instead of thinking, before I get my paycheck, where's it going to go? And when you look at your money before you get it, when you look at it and say, I'm going to be in control of where it's going, it's finite. It runs out. So taking control of that has helped. So making a budget, trimming the fat. Look at restaurants, going out to eat. COVID right now, but takeout. Look at your cell phone. Our cell phone bills. I know we have kids on our cell phone bills. It's crazy, but cell phone bills are a way. Cable bills are a way that you can look at things. Deductibles on your insurance are a way. If you're getting a big refund check back from the government every year, that means you're paying them too much money. Right? And a lot of people get big refund checks coming in the next couple of months, and they're like, yeah, look, let's go buy all this stuff. And instead, that you could be getting, get a $5,000 refund check. That's $400 a month that you could be intentional with. So trying to find those dollars where they are and trying to figure out and controlling where they're going is hugely important. It's a lot like a diet. I'm a big guy, and I've done lots of diets in my life. Right, is controlling the intake and the food intake. It's kind of the same thing. You control the money that comes in and the money that goes out, and when you can get control of that, that's when you can start to see those gains of making kind of progress towards your financial goals. The last thing on here, too, is once you make a budget, you've got to stick to it. And if you spend it, if you're spending your money first before you get it, if you spend it on something different, you have to tweak it and change something else. So if we decided to go out to eat, right? We got to tweak and change and take that money away from somewhere else and not put it on debt, right? Spending cash for things is huge. You got to start spending less than you earn, right? If all the money comes in and all the money goes out, you've made no traction towards financial goals for the future. So how do you control the amount of spending that you have and spending less money than you earn so that you can control that money to then put it into things like retirement or savings or extra on your house or whatever it is? You got to learn to say no, right? And I can share a story. Hopefully my brother won't see this, but my brother ridiculed us because we didn't go out to eat for about 10 years. We made our own food. And then he would say, well, Dave Ramsey says that, huh? Or he would say, but you're going to have retirement someday, right? You're going to have lots of money in the future, right? But we'd say, I'm sorry, we can't. We're out of money this month. We're out of money. Sorry. We can go next month and get it in our budget. But, I mean, people live in the now, right? They want to do it now, and they don't want to think about the future. And saying no has enabled us to get kind of where we are today. Without saying no, it would have never happened. Yep.
So we talked a lot about this saying no, and I went through a lot. The reason I did all those questions is because I could justify anything. He can justify anything. We both felt entitled, and so we wanted to kind of get a feel for how you felt. But when we decided to do this, and we decided to just go kind of change our direction, a completely different direction, we stopped buying things we didn't need to. We stopped going out to restaurants. And one of the stories that I remember is when we lived in Granville and my daughter was probably 4. I was working part-time. So she did errands with me. We went to Aldi. We would go to Target. We would go to the bank. And in Target, she must have been actually a little bit older. But in Target, a kid was in the toy aisle throwing a fit because he wanted a toy. And I remember Morgan thinking that was the weirdest thing because you don't buy toys at Target. We only buy soap at Target. And so she said, why is he crying? And I said, I think because he wants that toy. And she said, is it his birthday? And that's when it dawned on me that she doesn't know that you buy toys at Target. She doesn't know that you buy random toys at Target. So I just said, it must be his birthday. Like, let's go. We're going to go. We didn't have the arguments of driving by a McDonald's until we let up a little bit years later, and they started knowing that we can go to McDonald's. That's when they started arguing. But before, it was just a way of life, and they didn't know that you buy toys at Target. I thought that was a great story.
So the next one is you got to plan for your future. It says plan for all right. So planning for your future. So that's the next one. 15% into your, there we go. 15% into your retirement account. You're kind of thinking about that. Your kids' college, if you choose to fund those kind of things. And then the final thing is just becoming a generous person. That once you have money, there are opportunities all the time that will come up where you can be a generous person and help people. It's like God puts them in front of you once that happens. All right?
Okay, so we've gone over the why we decided we needed to make a change. Then he is the nuts and bolts guy, if you can't tell already. He's like the spreadsheet guy, the nerd, and getting me on board was a big deal because I grew up thinking everything was fine. I grew up when my mom just kind of bought me what she wanted to buy me on credit cards. We didn't think much of it. And when he told me how stressed he was, that's when we knew that my love for him was bigger than anything that I thought I needed to buy. So we kind of, like I said, we changed directions from going in this direction to going a completely different direction. Now here we are 21 years later. So we fast forward 21 years. All those years of saying no, all those years of bickering over money, because this stuff doesn't make problems go away. They just make us deal with our problems. So we had less problems, but we still had to talk about money. We still had to prioritize money. We still had to put each other's needs in front of our own. And when I said fast forward 21 years, it changed our family tree. It truly did. Now when I look at our relationship and I look at my children and I think, man, it was all worth it. It was worth it. And now we get to, Dave Ramsey has a tagline that he says, live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. And it took us a lot of years to get here, but we feel, not that we have arrived, but we feel like we are able to do some of the things that we want to do. So are we just doing here? Okay, all right. So the first way that it has changed us, perfect, thanks. The first way that it has changed us is our communication is up. Like I said, sometimes it's just talking. How do you feel about this? Other times it's kind of arguing, but we do have to talk about things. So our communication level is up, our stress level is down. We have been able to start using our money to do things that we want to do. We took my son Mason over to Italy for a graduation present. We are at the Grand Canyon. We went to San Francisco with Morgan. We just were experiencing moments with our family that had we stayed where we were, stress, overspending, entitlement, justification, moving money around, I don't know that we would have gotten to this point that we could. Because like Nate said, it doesn't matter how much money you make if you're not working to control what you have and to live with what you have. You can say, well, I'll do it later when I get a raise. I'll do it when I make this much. Then I'll start worrying about it. But it never really happens until you decide to make it happen, until you make it a priority. So the next way that we have changed our family tree is our children now have a healthier relationship with money. And as we were putting this together, I just couldn't stop smiling because I think of the choices my children are now making, and I think, wow, if we wouldn't have gone through the things that we went through and fought so hard to try to get out on the other side, I don't know that they might be where we were. So I asked them yesterday, I said, text me and tell me what you're the most proud of. Text me and tell me a way that you're handling money, because they all do a fantastic job. They are 3 completely different personalities, but they are doing things that they're very proud of. So Morgan responded back and said, I'm proud that I can go on vacations without feeling stressed when I know where most of my money is going and have control of it. I can use it to do the things that are important to me. I can learn others' culture or spend time with the people that I love. That's what she feels free now to be able to do. So in our house, when we talk about being financially free, we're meaning not bogged down by all these monthly bills and payments and trying to keep up with the Joneses. Now we're free to tell our money where we want it to go. And they haven't had it easy where everything has gone perfectly for them, but they keep fighting for that same general policy of trying to spend less than they make. So then Mason said, I'm the most proud of paying for my first car with cash. I have an emergency account if something goes wrong, and I've been able to help people when they need it. So like Keith said, you start to notice things around you. You notice people that need your help a lot more when you're able to help them. But if you're stressed and you're fighting and you don't know where your money is, you don't have the time and the peace to look around to see where God might be using you. You might be missing opportunity after opportunity because you're so bent on having your own life the way you want it. So, and then Logan, our baby, Logan, said, I'm proud that I can help my friends learn about money. I paid for my car with cash. I started an adventure fund with my girlfriend, and I'm getting ready to move out. And I went down in his room and I took a picture of his adventure fund. So he's not only thinking about money, but now his girlfriend Mia is thinking about money. And when they have extra cash, they slide it in this little box. And they also made a bucket list of things that they want to do in their future. It could be this year, it could be 20 years down the line, but the idea that they're starting to save money for things that they want to do is a very mature thing that has made me very proud of them. So we're extremely proud of all three of them, but the way that they handle money, we're particularly proud of them. So, go ahead.
So the next one, we've been able to save money for our children's college and our retirement. So we're kind of coming out the end of that. We've got 2 boys that probably are looking at graduating the next year and a half. But they're going to be able to graduate from college with no debt. And that was one of our main goals when we started this. We didn't want debt to follow them after college. And then the other thing is we're kind of in the middle of right now is looking at retirement. I'm retiring next year from teaching, and Kim has 3 years after that. So in the next 4 years, we will both be retired and kind of looking at what retirement looks like. And we feel very confident that we have the finances to be able to do that. The next one, probably the one that's the most fun. It's pretty fun raising kids. Well, it's not fun all the time raising kids, but we're proud of how they've come out. But it's helping people. We have a heart to try to help people, and it is amazing how God opens doors when you have the ability to help people, like being in line at Aldi's getting groceries and someone's debit card or credit card doesn't work, and you can just say, go ahead, I got it, and take their bill, or just little things. But some of the things that we've been able to do that we're starting to do with our family is we were able to go to Uganda last year on a missions trip with Morgan. Has that been last year and a half ago? Yeah, something like that. But we self-fund those. We pay for those. We don't fundraise for them. So by getting control of our money, we've been able to pay and be able to do that opportunity without having to worry about where the money's going to come from. So that's been a great blessing on our life too. Oh, so what we want you to do is just take another 30 seconds to a minute and just think about kind of what we shared and try to make a connection to something that we talked about with your spouse.
Okay. And kind of finish up the conversations. It was really important to us to give you a chance to say to your spouse what you're thinking about. We've gone to a lot of conferences where they just throw information after you or at you, and your brain starts reeling a little bit, but it's all about working together. So our goal, sorry. Nope, sorry. I did it wrong. So, because working together is so much sweeter. So we want to come back to Monica and Chandler because they didn't end in this fight. They are coming back and they're trying to work it out.
Hey.
Hey.
Listen, I've been thinking, and it's not fair for me to ask you to spend all of your money on our wedding. I mean, you work really hard for that. Well, you work for that.
Look, I thought about it too, and I'm sorry. I think we should spend all of the money on the wedding.
You do?
Yeah, I'm putting my foot down. Yeah, look, when I proposed, I told you that I would do anything to make you happy. And if having the perfect wedding makes you happy, then that's what we're gonna do.
You're so sweet. Oh, but wait. What about the future and stuff?
Yeah, forget about the future and stuff. So we only have 2 kids, we'll pick our favorite, and that one will get to go to college.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
How many kids were we gonna have?
4. A boy, twin girls, and another boy.
What else did you think about?
Well, stuff like where we'd live, you know, like a small place outside the city where our kids could learn to ride their bikes and stuff. You know, we could have a cat that had a bell on its collar, and we could hear it every time it ran through the little kitty door. Of course, we'd have an apartment over the garage where Joey could grow old.
You know what? I don't want a big fancy wedding.
Sure you do.
No. I want everything that you just said. I want a marriage.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I love you so much.
Love you. Hey, listen, when you were talking about our future, you said cat, but you meant dog, right?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, good.
Okay, who knew you'd get inspiration from a friend's show, right? But I loved when Monica said, I don't need the wedding, I need all of that stuff. So when you start aligning your goals together, you start just firing on all cylinders. If you're in constant struggle, it just makes what you can do less impactful, I guess. So we had 2 goals today we told you about at the beginning. We said we want to challenge what society tells you about money. That was the entitlement. I deserve it. I work hard. I will save us money in the future. So I'm curious, though, how did we score on those? Did anybody have 0? No, because I'm glad, because I would have called you out for lying. So you've had a lot of you, I'm sure, have said a lot of those things. So I think there were 8 of them. Anybody have 8 tallies? Oh, there's some that you don't say. Okay, all right. All right, so it's that entitlement that I want this. You had 4, not bad, not bad. So being able to delay that gratification a little bit and working together. So that brings us to our second goal. We want you and your spouse to just take one step closer to each other when dealing with money. Instead of, I think Nate actually said that at the beginning, is just stepping into that struggle, stepping into that conflict is so worth it. And so we want you to think about how you can leverage your money and your resources in a way that builds his kingdom. We want you to think about when we said, I deserve it. It's funny because we don't deserve any of it, right? None of it. And for us to be in the U.S., and I think you've said, like, we make the top 1% of the entire world's income, but we're still not happy because we deserve this or we deserve that. So think about how you can leverage your money, leverage your position, leverage your resources in a way that builds his kingdom. So you have that card, you have your pencil. I want you to think about, we'll give you about 30, 40 more seconds. But if you look at where you are right now with your spouse, what would be the next actionable step? What would be the next thing that you could do to be able to work together as far as finances are concerned? Okay, so think about that. Spend about 30, 40 seconds talking about it, and then we'll give you some resources in just a minute, okay? Go ahead. Okay. If you come back to me, here's what I'm hoping you'll do with this goal. I'm hoping that it's a goal that you can take, maybe even starting tomorrow. It's a goal. I want you to bring it home. I want you to tape it on the refrigerator, because for me, for being the free spirit in the relationship, those were always nice for me because I have that security gland. I want to know that he's in it with me. We're working together. So in my eyes, that index card that you have can be up on the refrigerator as a symbol that you're taking a step in towards your relationship. All right? I'm hoping that's what you'll be able to do.
The other thing is these actionable goals. We actually, every January, we sit down and talk about what are our financial goals for the year and what are our 5-year goals. And we've saved them in a spreadsheet since we started this in the year 2000. So our very first financial goal that we had, my brother was getting married, and we wanted to pay for cash for everything in his wedding, because I was in his wedding, Mason was in his wedding, Morgan was in the wedding. So we had all these, tuxes to rent and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun to go back and look at all the accomplishments we've made in 20 years, worth of financial goals. So it's something that I would encourage you. The new year is always a good time to sit down in January and say, okay, where are we going this year with our money? Where are we going to go in the next 5 to 10 years with our money? The other thing I think before I talk about this QR code is that Dave Ramsey talks about money being crock pots, not microwaves. And we live in a microwave society. We want instant gratification. We want things to happen right now all the time. And financially, it takes time. It's not something that's going to happen right away. And I don't know your circumstances and where you're at. Some people could be in some situations where we were, and it's a house of Jenga, right? One little thing happens and the whole thing comes tumbling down. And other people could be all the way out the back end of this. I mean, it depends on where you're at financially. But the idea that it's not going to happen in 3 months or 6 months. I mean, it took us almost 11 years to finally get to the point where, for us, the big moment probably was when we paid off our house. I mean, that freed up everything. It takes time, and it takes that shared commitment over a long period of time in order to reach those goals. But I'm telling you, coming out the other end of it, it's so worth it. So worth it.
The last thing I want to say before we tell you about this is that I feel like Nate and Ben, every time they start a series or a service on money, they always say it's not about the money. And that has really hit me. When we argue about money, it's a lot of times not about the money. I want to be heard. He wants to be heard. We have needs that we feel like aren't being met. And it's not about the yellow pad with all the numbers written down. It becomes about power and control. And those are things you have to work through in a marriage. So when they say it's not about the money, I believe it. It's not about the money.
All right, so this is our last slide. So our son, Mason, decided to make us technology savvy. So we went to bed last night, and we had gone through this and showed him it, and he made this slide for us. So this is a QR code. So if you use your phone, on my phone, it's in my camera, and you scan it, it'll take you to a Google Doc. And on that Google Doc are a bunch of resources that Mason found. That Dave Ramsey is one resource, and that's kind of what's in there because that's what we used. But there are many other resources. I think the thing that's the most important is that you and your spouse do it together, and you agree together, and you kind of make a plan together. There's lots of different programs, but the one that we kind of did was Dave Ramsey's program. So to give you a bunch of resources, books, and Financial Peace University information, lots of stuff that's in there that if you want more information, you can look that up. So.
If your phone is saying move closer, Mason showed me this morning, if you just zoom it in, it should be able to capture that. Has anybody made it work? Have you been able to? You've got it to work? Good. We're hoping you at home can use a TV and you can scan it, and that brings it to a lot of live links. Like we said, Mason has kind of taken this. He's become a big believer in spending money this way, and so he was excited about doing this with us. But that's it for us today. Yes. Do you want this? Oh. So the question, what were the greatest challenges to staying committed to your money plan? And that is actually a really loaded question because we make it sound so easy, like, oh, we made this choice, and then we did it. For me, it was the saying no part. It was deciding that it's okay if my friends are all doing something or everybody in the neighborhood is doing something and we are able to say no. That's a hard thing to do. It sounds great, very difficult. So for me, that's the part that I struggled with. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that initially was the no part too, is telling your family and your friends you couldn't do something because you didn't have the money. So that was hard in the beginning. I can kind of tweak this a little bit maybe and say, the thing that's the greatest challenge, the things that you want to do, when you get control of your money with a budget and you put them in the budget, those challenges, the things that you want, if you'll just delay the gratification for a little bit, you can put them in your budget so they can get in there. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers it, but.
The last one is, how did your financial plan improve your marriage? I think it just gave us common goals. I think it made us both kind of work together side by side and pulling in the same direction. And then we could, where you spend your money is kind of your values. It's kind of your, where you see yourself in the world. If it's all about me, I get everything, I deserve everything, then that's probably how you see yourself in this world. But if you start thinking about saying no, putting the brakes on when something doesn't make sense, it has just improved our marriage. Because like I said, he's the nerd, he's the spreadsheet guy, he's the numbers guy, he's the nuts and bolts guy, and I'm the free spirit. But us free spirits, we can be passionate about it. We just have to believe in it. If we believe in it, then we're more than happy to go in that direction with our nerd. We love our nerds. We need our nerds. But we had to make sure that we both had a voice. And that's an important part of marriage, not just in finances, in every part of your marriage.
Instead of nerd, I prefer organizer, because that's what I am. I'm an organizer. I like to be organized with my money. So, yeah, I think that the big thing it did for our marriage is when we started this, I was stressed. I was worried, and I'm not worried anymore. So I don't stress about money. And when I'm not stressed, I'm more agreeable. So easier to be around, and our marriage is definitely better because of that. And I think now coming out the back end of it is, I get to see the world with her. I get to go, we can pretty much go and do what we want because we built it into our budget and we're able to do those things. So we're to the point now where it's fun. Like you get to, you're looking at planning a couple trips a year and where do you want to go and what do you want to see, and so that part out this end at the end of it is improving our marriage too, because together we're seeing the things that we've always dreamt about seeing, and some of those dreams are coming true, which is pretty cool.
And don't think our saying no days are over, because we have 3 teenagers. We say no a lot. We have to say no a lot. So our kids will say, there's nothing in the house to eat. Can we just get pizza? We're like, no, we can't get pizza. We don't have any money this week because we have an allotted amount of money to spend on groceries or whatever we need for food. And we say we don't have any money. And then our kids go, oh, but you have a retirement. And we laugh because we say, well, we have a retirement because we're not spending it on pizza, so we can't get pizza. And some of those nights when you're tired and you just want to, our no-saying days are not over. It's a commitment that we've made for the rest of our lives, because there is an infinite amount of things out in this world that you could want to buy. Our wants don't go away. They're just, we're teaching my 4th graders about like needs and wants and resources, and we want a lot of things, so we have to kind of curb that. So the last one, or next one, any words of advice as to how to start a marriage financially stable? That's a really great question because we did not do that. But you want to start?
No, I would say that the biggest thing that helped us was paying cash. When you use cash hurts. When you use a credit card, it's like, right, they make it almost sound cool when you use it, right? So I would say if you can start off a marriage and you're spending cash on the things that you're kind of, as you're in your daily expenses, and you're really creating that budget together, and both sides having a say in where the money's going, I think if you could do those two things to start a marriage, it would be huge. And then I think for me, the dreaming part's important. Like, I'm doing this because later on I can do this. And right now I'm saying no right now because later on I get to say yes, right? So that delayed gratification is important too, is controlling your money. It's not overly enjoyable in the beginning, but the whole point is that you then get to do the things that you want to do later, and they're not going to follow you home after your vacation. Your vacation ends, they're paid for, and they're done, and then you get to look at going on the next vacation or whatever is important to you, the next piece of furniture in your house. I don't know, but it's that dreaming part that's important for me. I'm a dreamer, and sometimes it drives her nuts because I like to dream all the time, but I guess I'm a nerdy dreamer then.
That is actually true. Sometimes we're on a vacation in Florida, and towards the end of the vacation, I look and he's doing something on his iPad or computer. Like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm looking for a house next year. And I think, oh my goodness, enjoy this one before you start looking at next one. But like I said, we need each other. We need to be able to enjoy life a little now, and we need to be able to plan for the future. My word of advice is to starting financially stable, where actually our kids are now at this age, where our kids are starting to think about starting a life with the person that they love. And we keep telling them to get on the same page about money. Just talk about it, work through it. Money is not going to go away. You have to be able to control it, or it will control you. So to watch our boys in new relationships is been very fun. It's been very gratifying to watch them because you can hear them have a conversation. So Mason will tell his girlfriend, we can't go out tonight. I don't have any money. My restaurant budget's out or whatever. And I just kind of smile and walk away because you got to work through it. So getting on the same page, fighting for each other, and then the dreaming is what took me along too. So when he started saying, Kim, look, if we didn't have this payment, this payment, this payment, and this payment, we would have this much money extra a month. Think of what we could do with this much money extra a month. And then I started going, okay, I like what you're saying. And then I can start working towards that too. So the way our relationship is, he's the nerd, but he's also the spender. And I'm the free spirit, but I'm a saver. I'll say no to anything because I want to make sure that we have enough money and that we're secure. But just getting on the same page, super, super important. Is that the last one? That's okay.
Kim and Keith, thank you so very, very much. It's three things I want to say about Kim and Keith. First of all, the way that they are continually generous with people and the way that their kids are generous with people is of significance to me, and I've watched it firsthand and so grateful for that, and it continues to play itself out. The second thing is that Kim and Keith have taught several of the workshops and the seminars for the Dave Ramsey stuff, and they have also been financial coaches for us, and the impact of that has a ripple effect. I think when you start dealing with financial stuff, you start having a multi-generational impact, like what you described, and I think that's incredibly consequential. And I think maybe for me, when it comes to Kim and Keith's journey, Kim said something to me several months ago, probably a few years ago now, when I was asking them kind of about their own journey, and she said, in so many ways, I learned how to trust my husband and trust his heart and trust his character as a result of our financial journey together. And as I heard her kind of share that, I thought, what another way in which God's plan and God's design for how we do life plays itself out in some beautiful ways, where there's a healing that happens, there's an intimacy that develops in the relationship as a result of simply deciding we're going to do money the right way. And so grateful for your journey through that. I want to do one more thing tonight, and then I'm going to try to close us with a couple of very practical things. I want to do one more thing. I want you to take a look at a clip of a couple talking about emotional safety in relationships. As I was thinking about the money side of it, and I was thinking about the way that money creates conflict, and the need for us to be emotionally safe enough to be able to have real conversations about anything. Money is just one of the many different kind of conversations we need to have. But I want you to take a look at this clip, and then I'm going to close out our time together by giving you just a couple of exercises to build emotional safety, emotional intimacy in your marriage. Take a look at this, and then we'll close it out with some practical things.
Do you ever hear a principle and think, well, that doesn't apply to me? When it came to emotional safety, I thought I was extremely safe. I didn't attack Russ verbally during an argument. I never regretted anything I said because I never said anything. I was the nice one in an argument. I simply walked away and never brought the topic up again. Because if you ignore it long enough, it goes away, right? Let's talk about emotional safety. Angry outbursts, being defensive, being critical, disrespectful, those are all obvious examples of being emotionally unsafe with your spouse. But shutting down is included in this list.
Now, if you had asked me years ago if I was safe, I would have said yes, because I thought it meant physical safety. But I've since learned there's a whole nother level of safety, which is your emotions.
Me too. I was shocked to learn that shutting down was being emotionally unsafe. I truly thought I was being the nice one in the argument because I didn't say anything mean. But shutting down is one of the 4 leading predictors of divorce, according to marriage expert Dr. John Gottman. Early on in our marriage, I thought Russ was the one who was not emotionally safe because of his intense verbal command of the English language combined with his magnification and overreactions. It could shut me down for days.
Yeah, don't remind me. I thought she was the one that was not emotionally safe. She would shut down or stay in what I call a funk for weeks.
Our marriage counselor gave us some visuals to describe what we look like in an argument. He's the tiger. I'm the turtle. The more the tiger comes after me, the more I'll hunker down in my turtle shell.
Danielle thought she was being the nice one by shutting down. She since learned that shutting down is just as damaging to the relationship as my words were. We both needed to learn how to be emotionally safe. Now, before we talk about being emotionally safe, let's step back and talk about the science of what is happening when you engage in an argument.
So you have these stress hormones that are flooding your system. Adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine. Those stress hormones shift you out of the logical part of your brain back to the reactive part of your brain, the amygdala.
Now, when your amygdala gets triggered, you only have 3 options. You either fight, flee, or freeze. Now, I have a tendency to fight, and Danielle will do a combination of either flee or freeze.
Fleeing from the conversation was my way of protecting myself when I got hurt. But I've since learned there is more damage done when I don't return to the conversation.
It's just as important for me to stop arguing as it is for Danielle to take some time away from the argument. It used to make me so anxious when she would walk away because I wanted to fix the argument in the moment. Our first fight, she wouldn't talk to me for 3 days. And when I was used to fixing a fight in 3 minutes, it's just like at work. We would just hash it out and resolve the situation.
Sorry.
Now, some couples will push back when they want to resolve conflict before bed and quote the Bible verse, Ephesians 4:26, where it says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry." They do this believing they should argue until the fight is resolved. But I love what Danielle saw when she studied this verse. It says, "Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry." Now, it's not up to your spouse to make you unangry. Your feelings of being angry, sad, or frustrated may be more about what's inside of you versus what your spouse does.
And most people assume that they're emotionally safe, but few have all the safety characteristics. Instead of being defensive, a safe person receives feedback. Instead of shutting down an argument, a safe person stays engaged. Instead of trying to fix whatever it is your spouse is telling you about, a safe person shows empathy. Instead of interrupting while they are talking, a safe person listens well and seeks to understand their spouse's perspective.
Now, a good exercise to practice emotional safety is to ask, have I done anything to frustrate or hurt you this week? Now, it's important to make sure you're fresh, that you're emotionally safe, and ready to listen, and most importantly, try to understand your spouse's perspective. Now, I always ask the men to go first by being leaders here. So step 1, ask your spouse if you've done anything the past week to frustrate or hurt them. And whatever they say, make sure not to get defensive or react negatively.
And that includes body language, your tone, and the words that you're using.
Yes, remember their perspective is their truth, whether you agree with it or not. All right, step 2 is to validate their feelings, even if you don't think they're justified. For example, say, I'm sorry I frustrated you, or I'm sorry I hurt you. The last thing I want to do is frustrate you or hurt you. And then step 3, ask them what they would have liked you to have done differently. And when they answer, commit to trying to do your best next time. Even though there's a good chance that you'll mess up again in a similar situation, I often do, but over time you'll get better at it. And if they ask for something you know you probably can't do, then suggest something back. The key here is to work together on a common solution to try to keep the frustration or hurt from happening again. When you finish, you'll switch and let your wife lead the process. Now this will take some time to get good at, but it's one of the best ways to grow closer to each other. Danielle and I have learned that getting good at managing conflict and repairing after hurting each other is when we often feel the closest to each other. I never would believe that we could feel this close after conflict before actually seeing this process work.
Now we're going to role play an example of what it looks like to be emotionally unsafe and emotionally safe, and this is an actual thing that has happened.
So first we're going to give you the example of how we were not emotionally safe. So here's the context. Early in our marriage, we were at a friend's dinner one Saturday night, and Danielle felt ignored.
So on our drive home, I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I'm sulking, not saying anything.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
What do you mean nothing? Something's wrong.
You ignored me all night.
It's a bunch of bull. What are you talking about? I did not ignore you.
You always ignore me when we're with your friends. It went on for hours.
You are always exaggerating. You just wanted to ruin my fun night. And then that's the end of the argument, because she'll stay like that for days, not saying a word.
Sorry.
All right, so now we'll give you an example later in our marriage when this scenario happens, and we're going to show you how to be emotionally safe.
Okay, so under this emotional safe scenario, we're both getting back into the car, and during the evening, I got my feelings hurt. I had felt really ignored during the evening, and it's natural for me to want to blame Russ for it. But what I do now is I think about, okay, why did that hurt me so bad? Because when my feelings are that strong, I know it's more about me than it is about what something Russ might have done to me. So I think about, okay, how can I take responsibility for this? Okay, so I'm just kind of peeling back what is bothering me and trying to process the whole situation.
Is something wrong, honey? Did I do something tonight that hurt you or frustrated you?
Oh, I felt ignored for most of the evening at the party. It just was really frustrating.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The last thing I want you to do is to feel ignored. Can you tell me more why you felt ignored?
I don't know. That's probably why I'm being so quiet. I'm just trying to think through why it's just so hard, because it's hard to contribute to a conversation when it's all about football. You're reminiscing about growing up here when I didn't grow up here. I feel ignored and it feels so real in the moment. And what I'm trying to do is take responsibility for feeling ignored. And you know, my childhood emotional wound is feeling ignored. And in the moment, it feels so real. And yes, I was mad at you in the moment, but as I think about it, I know this is more about me, but gosh, in those moments, it just feels so real that it's happening.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I can really understand why you felt ignored, and I'm so sorry. Can you please forgive me? And also, can you help me by telling me what I could have done differently that might have helped next time in the same situation?
Sure, and of course I forgive you. I don't really necessarily see this as your problem. It's more about me than you. But something that you could do that would help me is perhaps next time you could involve me in the conversation, even if it means changing the subject.
Okay, well first, thank you for forgiving me. And that's a great point about next time. I'll definitely try to be more aware of what's going on and include you in the conversation, even if it means me changing the subject, even if that subject's football.
You're so sacrificial.
Thank you, honey.
Now let's talk about how those two scenarios were different. Obviously, the ending went differently, but the beginning also did. Did you notice that I started with I statements and a feeling that I had in the second scenario? In the first, I was accusatory with you statements and an angry tone, and then I pulled the always word. When we use the always word in marriage, as in you always ignore me when you're with your friends, we're showing our spouse that we are keeping score. And who wants to be married to someone who keeps a record of when he or she messes up?
All right, so remember to be emotionally safe based on the characteristics that we described earlier. That way your spouse can be honest with you. Because if you don't turn towards each other over time, you might turn elsewhere.
And you'll experience 3 things in this exercise. You'll be encouraged, you'll learn something, but you'll also get your feelings hurt. It took several years before I learned how Russ was walking on eggshells around me, because if he said anything I didn't like, I would shut down. I was shocked that my shutting down was creating this anxiety within him. Again, I thought I was just protecting myself and preventing myself from saying anything mean. A safe spouse would stay engaged in the conversation even when it gets hard.
For sure. Now, there's a popular verse from the Bible that's included in most weddings. It's found in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, where it says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs."
Now that's a picture of safety. Listen to this again and think about your spouse. The way I choose to love my spouse should be characterized by being patient, being kind, not envying, not boasting, not being proud, not dishonoring him or her, not being easily angered, and not keeping a record of wrongs. God gave us that picture of what love really is, and He knew that we would all need His help to live that out in marriage.
All right, so here's our challenge for you. Pick one of the following attributes in the verse, like patience or kindness, not envious, doesn't boast, and then work on implementing into your marriage the next week. You'll have moments where you'll have to pause and ask God to help you. That's okay. Then the following week, apply a new one. As we close, and if you remember nothing else, here's the bottom line. In order to have a thriving marriage, we must become a safe spouse. Thanks so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
In order to have a thriving marriage,
So before you go, I want to close out our time with some techniques because I want you to think about it this way. In so many ways, marriage is like building blocks to get us to where we want to be. And when it comes to conflict resolution, to be able to deal with conflict in a healthy way, you've got to be able to do emotionally loaded communication. If you can't have communication in a healthy way that has emotional tones to it, you're not going to be able to resolve conflict. In order to be able to do that, you've got to have emotional safety as one of those foundational building blocks for marriage. And so how do you cultivate that? How do you build that? How do you restore that when it goes awry? Because it's going to naturally go awry. In fact, I would dare say this: the goal of marriage is not to keep yourself on the tracks. The goal of marriage is to get on the tracks, and then when you get off, be able to identify that you're off the tracks and have a plan for how you're going to get back on the tracks. Because in so many ways, and Carla and I have walked this path for so many years, we could be in a great place on a Sunday, and by Monday afternoon, things are really jacked up. And we're trying to figure out how we got to this place. And there's so many extracurricular things and other things that are going on that the reality is we've just got to figure out how do we get back on track rather than obsessing about the fact that we're off the tracks. How do we get back on the track? So here's 4, and then I'm going to give you 2 other ones I want you to think about. And here's the deal. Some of these are going to be a little uncomfortable. I get that. Some of these are proactive, and some of these are actually responsive to the specific issue and conflict that you're in. And so one of my favorites is 5 things. To just in a random conversation be in a place where we can say, hey, give me 5 things that you're looking forward to next summer. Give me 5 things that you need from me over the next month. Give me 5 things that you're hoping for our kids in the next year. To be able to just use 5 things, and I love 5 things because 5 things pushes us past just the first or second thing that comes to my mind. When I ask you for 5 things, it forces you to stop and answer it and to think about the answer to that. And it's one of those proactive things to just build connection and real level of interest in what's going on. And you can ask 5 things about anything of substance, and it's a proactive question that allows for good connection, and it forces you to stop and reflect on it and to be able to actually give something meaningful. The second one is the 1-minute hug. Scientifically, there's all kinds of really interesting research on these next 2, and that is, or actually on the next 3. The 1-minute hug, it has been recommended by psychologists across the country that a 1-minute hug once a day shoots so many connector hormones through us. Oxytocin is just put into overdrive, that when you stop and you hug for 1 minute, and guys, I know this is weird, man. Like, this is hard. Like, it's hard to slow down enough. But you literally connect. It begins to put your heartbeat in rhythm with one another. And that 1-minute hug has so many powerful benefits to choosing to just stop, give each other a hug for 1 minute, and then move on with your day. The other one that kind of goes with it is, it's called the 20-second kiss. It has got some incredible scientific backing to suggest that a 20-second kiss that doesn't lead to sex, right? So it's not a sexual action. It's an affectionate thing where you take time, and you can kiss however you want. It's just not going to take you into the bedroom, right? But that 20-second kiss, again, it's not a peck on the cheek. It's not even a peck on the lips. It's a stop and kiss and let it be what it is before you move on. It's an intimate connection that has so much backing on what it puts into us and the connect points that it allows for and the feeling of deep connection that we have, which makes every other kind of conflict feel more manageable because we have that emotional connection in place. And then the last one on this list, before I get to the other 2, is probably the weirdest. It might be the hardest. Quite frankly, it is incredibly risky. But if you are in the middle of a conflict with a spouse and you find yourself both frustrated and riled up and you just don't even know where to go from here, it's been recommended, and the research on this is fascinating, that you sit down together, as weird as this sounds, because again, here's a risk, right? That when I'm in conflict with my spouse, I sit down with my spouse and I take their hand and we sit down and we try to sync our breathing with each other. And the research behind the fact that if you sit down, hold each other's hand, and then you try to sync up your breathing, and that ultimately the goal of this is that you get to the point where you now have 7 breaths that you take in rhythm with one another. When you can do that and have 7 consecutive breaths that you take in rhythm with each other, it actually slows your heart rate down. It de-escalates your intensity, and it allows for the rest of your brain to come back into effect where you're not just operating from that flight-fright kind of mechanism, but you actually begin to re-engage the rest of the problem-solving part of your brain, which oftentimes goes AWOL when you're in significant conflict, which is why we often say when the emotions are highest, the wisdom is lowest. And the ability to slow down and connect in this way may be one of the best things I can offer you. Although I fully recognize when you're at each other's throat and you just want to hurt each other, sitting down and holding each other's hands and trying to get your breathing in sync is incredibly difficult. I promise you there's some incredible benefits to that. 2 more that I really appreciate. The one is this, the miracle question. Suppose tonight, while you slept, a miracle occurred. And when you awake tomorrow, what would be some of the things that you would notice that would tell you that life had gotten significantly better, that our marriage had significantly improved? If you went to bed tonight and you woke up tomorrow morning and you were trying to ask the question, is our marriage better today than it was yesterday? What are some of the things that you would look for? It has all kinds of ways of filling in some of the blanks for the stuff that you're just never really talking about. You don't even know how to put language to. You want from your spouse, but you're not sure how to ask for. I love this miracle question just to say, hey, how would you know that your marriage was better if you woke up tomorrow morning, you started looking around, what are some of the things you would be looking for? And then the last one, I think we should have strategic conversations. I think once a week, you should have a strategic conversation. And I gave you a bunch of questions to ask during this conversation. I'll tell you, you can go online, you can look up John Gottman's stuff, you can look at the Parrots material. There's a vast just an array of resources out there for great questions to ask each other. But I think you should have one meaningful touch point every week where you just ask each other really significant, probing questions. Where do you want to be in 5 years? If money wasn't an object, what would you do? What's your biggest fear right now in our relationship or in life? What's your biggest regret at this point? What are your greatest hopes for our kids? What do you need from me in this new situation or this new job opportunity? To ask specific questions. And I would dare say this is not ask a whole bunch of them at one time, but to sit down together once a week and just ask one or two probing questions. That they're not trying to fix the marriage, that you're not trying to do major surgery on anything. You're just trying to build connection and get to a place of rhythm. We want you to thrive. And there's a lot of different facets to thriving. So grateful for the Tidies. I thank you for your experience. I thank you for your expertise. And I thank you for your willingness to share it with us in this setting, the way you've done it individually. And so grateful for the way in which your motto and the way in which you've walked this through has allowed us to get snapshots of what are the things that we have that are out of order and the things that we need to put back into alignment. Because ultimately, if we're going to thrive, one of the ways that we're going to thrive is by getting a handle on how we're dealing with money, and then how we deal with that allows us the freedom to consider some other things. But our hope and our goals are that there's takeaways from this, some great resources available to you. Thank you so much for joining us. SBC, we love you, and so excited about helping you continue to build marriages that thrive and seeing and understanding the critical importance of having resilient marriages. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you're well.